Good evening, my friends. I want to go through some nitty gritty details of what reintegration into life looks like when we're rewiring our brains. So, if you are very early on in your process and or triggered by anything that is slightly negative, I would recommend watching this later on. For those of you who want to see the real side of rewiring, the stuff that's not all clouds and fluffy rainbows and unicorns and fantasy stuff, this is for you. I had a client this evening who said that she thought that this was like really helpful information that she hadn't gotten from anywhere else and would make a great video, and I decided to take her word for it and do it. So the first thing, I'm going to talk about two things, but the first one is how to identify and catch behavioral pops, because that's a really common, and behavioral pops meaning any unhealthy behavior pattern. And the thing about brain rewiring, because it's not recovery from an addiction, we're not addicted to any particular activity or substance or anything like that. It's an addictive pattern. The brain is addicted to stress chemistry, to stress, so the chemistry of stress. So that's something that is invisible and requires a lot of curious observing of yourself to make sure that we're not engaging in our lives in ways that create that kind of stress chemistry. Because that loop, if we engage in something out of compulsion or out of a lack of self-worth, then that will create that stress chemistry. That compulsive feeling, like if you go to do something when you can't not check your phone, or you're like, oh, I have to do this or else I'm not going to be okay. That's the feeling behind it, whatever it is if I don't do this right now, or if I don't do this by the end of today, if I don't do this in some form and with some sense of urgency, I won't be okay. That is a pretty easy way to know that your self-worth is tied up in that activity in some way. There's some way that your brain is viewing that activity that has something to do with your self-worth. So that's the first. Make sure I'm not getting ahead of myself here. Yeah, so those are the two of the basic or main ways that your brain can turn any activity into something that creates stress chemistry, is by either creating compulsion around it, by just for its own sake. Like the phone thing doesn't really have anything to do with self-worth. It's really just compulsion for its own sake. But one of the things too I wanted to talk about in relation to this is one of the things I see that happens. It happened for me a lot in my recovery, and it has taken an enormous amount of willpower to stop this cycle, is the desire to jump back into working a lot more, like taking on more tasks in my day-to-day life, because it's a good thing to do when there's so much work to be done, and it's satisfying, and you feel good when you're productive. And that was also what was coming up for my client, and it's something I see so often. It's a very widespread thing of like, I want to be productive, and there can be this compulsion, this need to just get things done, and because it feels good, but we're forgetting about our authentic needs in the process. And a lot of times what happens is that we then end up in a spike or an ebb, because we pushed ourselves too far, because we felt good and we felt like doing it. And that's another behavioral pattern that is unhealthy. When we're in recovery, we never ever judge or decide what to do on any given day based on how we feel in the present moment. That is not an indicator of where we're at, because the limbic system, the way it works in recovery, it can be anywhere along the spectrum, and the point is we're trying to train it to be consistent. A lot of times if we're feeling good, it's because we've been doing the work, we've been consistent, so we need to keep being consistent in order to keep getting those same results. And if we're not feeling well, it could just be because the limbic system's activated, and you'll feel fine in a few hours or a few days, or you're just in an ebb or something like that, but it's not necessarily a marker of progress. How easily you can redirect is a better marker of progress. But in this case, a lot of times, because there is a tendency to judge, to be like, oh, well, I was feeling good, so I spent 4 hours cleaning or painting, or even 2 hours doing extra chores because they're there, and that's life. This is life as we live it. There's always something to be done. There's always a long list of things that could be done in any person's life that is just sitting there waiting to be done. And that's the secret, though, is that is always true. That list is never going to go away. So training ourselves to engage in things in a healthy way creates a sustainable way of life that allows us to recover and to maintain our recovery. And the other bit that comes into play with that is just the overall, the incremental nature of being human. And I know I've talked about this before, and it's so foundational. It's the case for all people, whether you've had any sort of brain injury or whether you're in recovery or not. We all need to increase our load incrementally. Training for a marathon is a great example. I walk in barefoot shoes or barefoot a lot of the time, and another area where I know a biomechanist who I follow and love who says a lot of people end up with, slight injuries because they transition too quickly from wearing sneakers all the time to running barefoot instead of walking in between and doing it incrementally. And it's just one of those things where in life in general, we need to allow our bodies and brains the time to adapt. So this is where logic and math come in. Just keeping a general concept in your mind of how much work you've done, that you've been doing, like how much load. And when I say load, it could be day-to-day tasks, it could be you're rewiring a core belief, it could be you had something happen in your life that is a big load emotionally and you're having to process a lot of emotions. All of those things count as an extra load to your brain. So just keeping a general awareness and maybe writing it down if you need to, but keeping an awareness of how much load you have overall in the course of a week or so, and making sure that you're increasing that by about 20 to 25% per week. And even then, if you do that for a few weeks, you're going to need to plateau and give yourself a break or step back a little bit and allow your brain and your body to catch up and adapt. Rest is where most of the change happens. We train ourselves, and then when we rest, the neuronal pathways get pruned away that we haven't used, and the new ones get stronger, and everything sets. And that's absolutely crucial to move forward. So when you are moving back into living life, and it could be anything. It could be even, and I've seen people do this with other things too, like playing games or drinking wine, and just things that are more on the, not work, but again, the same thing where it's like, oh, well, it feels good, and it becomes this replacement for actually nurturing yourself and feeding your soul and giving yourself rest. So that's kind of the diagnosis of what happens. And this is just, it's a common pattern I see in people who are and in myself, where you're really getting momentum going, and then you're doing great, and then you kind of get back to living life, and if you're not paying close attention to why you're doing what you're doing, and how much of it you're doing, and why you're doing that much of it, it's like you can slide down this slippery slope, and then a month later it's like, oh, what happened? So this is a good preemptive thing to do, and that is one of my biggest things that I am such a fan of, is being proactive about things, because we get so used to reacting to whatever our brain is giving us all the time that when it eases off a little bit, it's so tempting to just be like, I'm just gonna not do anything for a while. I'm just gonna cruise. But cruising is completely an illusion. There's no such thing as cruising. So turning around and being proactive about consistently still choosing good things for yourself because you deserve it, instead of reacting to your limbic system, is so crucial. So this awareness is the first part, awareness of the patterns and being aware of them, so that as you move into your life, you can keep that momentum going that you got when things were more difficult, and you had to have that much of a boot camp intense kind of, present moment, every pop, keep track of all the thoughts. You get this great momentum going, and then the limbic system, the brain will calm down and not be giving you so much to handle. But it's so crucial for you to keep that momentum of that conscious choice of what is good because it's good, so that you keep moving in that direction. So the biggest tool that I recommend using for this, that I've used extensively, is every time you're about to do a task, aside from the logical mathematical part of keeping track of your training zone, anytime you want to do something, anything, whether it's, again, like literally anything, but you're kind of moving as you go through your day, because that's part of when we're reintegrating into life, we're having a more normal day, and you can kind of get in flow and sometimes just forget about being a curious observer. So cultivating that curious observer by checking in with yourself when you begin a new activity and asking yourself, okay, what do I need in this moment, and what are my motives behind this? And making sure that you're pausing long enough before you do something, and letting go of fear, letting go of thinking, um, so that you can hear the answer. Because a lot of times I'm sure you know of people who have selective hearing and they only hear what they want to hear. And we are that way with ourselves when it comes to things like this, where it's like, we only want to hear the answer that's in alignment with what our ego wants. Like, I feel like doing this. I want to do this. Yeah, of course it's a good idea. Let me rationalize all the reasons why it's a good idea. And this practice requires letting go of that selective hearing, letting go of the fear of being uncomfortable. Because the chances are, if you need to do something different than what you're used to doing, it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's also going to lead to recovery and to healing and to calm and to rest and to peace and to well-being and to achieving all of your goals and everything that you want in your life. So that's the question. Every time you go to do something, okay, what's my motive here? And this even applies to utilizing your tools. If you're seeking to elevate your mood, if you're seeking to take a walk, if you're going to do a practice round, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But if the reason is that you're trying to fix yourself, or you're trying to kind of shove a problem under the rug, or avoid actually facing something, or just slap a band-aid on it, then it's not going to work, because the intention is not love. The intention is not love for its own sake. That's the only thing that heals, is unconditional love for its own sake. So check in with yourself. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? And if you realize, okay, whatever activity I wanted to do, checking my phone, going on Facebook, probably not, WhatsApp, whatnot. That's not what I need right now. It may sound appealing, but that's definitely not what I need to do. Okay, what do I need to do then? Do I want to go wash a few dishes? Do I want to go pet my cat or play with my dog or go outside for a few minutes or complete a task or actually call a friend and have some, something more tangible human interaction? Doesn't really matter, but really check in with yourself and listen for what's the need. What is it that I'm actually looking for here? Am I looking for distraction? Am I looking for connection? Am I looking for attention? Am I looking for just something to give me a boost of like energy and freshen my perspective of life? YouTube has a lot of great, just again, interesting, educational, inspiring videos for that sort of thing. If you need something different than Facebook, if that's not a good place for you to be. But regardless of what it is, that's the question, that's the process, asking yourself, listening, and then deciding. And it really can go both ways. A lot of times we end up doing the thing we set out thinking we wanted to do. But going into it because we're choosing it, because I choose this because I really want to do this. This is what's best for me right now. This is what's going to nourish my heart. This is what serves me in my life. I need to get this done. I want to do this. And that's sometimes the perspective when it comes to things that we know we need to do but we don't want to do, is saying, okay, maybe I don't even want to do this, but I'm not going to do it with a grumpy attitude because I know that's going to create stress chemistry and pull me away from myself and my goals and my recovery. So how can I take a perspective of understanding that I'm choosing this because I love myself? I'm doing this as an act of self-love, whatever this task is that is appearing less than pleasant to my limbic system at the present moment. No, this is really what I want. And really get yourself in that mindset before you begin, of taking a perspective that shows you just how desirable it is to do this activity. So that's the process overall for that, for making sure that you're engaging in your life in a way that keeps you in a positive emotional state and in positive neuronal chemistry. Okay, so the other second part of this was kind of talking through the question my client asked that was so great, is what do you do when you're just kind of feeling, I can't remember what she said, empty or just not engaged in the situation. You're in a situation, you're already in it, your limbic system's activated, you're just not feeling it, it's not working out the way you imagined the story in your mind, it's not playing out the way you wish it would have. What do you do in that situation when you can't leave? You're stuck there, wherever it is. And I thought that was a really good question. So I actually had, my limbic system's been very active for the last few weeks, so I had a great story about this that happened earlier this week. I took my 5 children hiking by myself, which I've done quite a number of times, and it usually goes fine, and I usually have no issues with it. So this was the first time, because I haven't had an ebb like this in a very long time, I wasn't expecting it to happen, ergo the story. So we went hiking, went and did a picnic, and we started walking, and we had intended to do like a 3 or 4 mile hike. We got about 3/4 of a mile in, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to to make it all the way. Like, I don't have enough energy to cajole my 5 children on and keep myself in a good space. And so we went about a mile and we turned around and went back. And the whole time there was, for me personally, there was 4 stories my brain wanted me to buy into. One of them was the story of struggle. And part of it is the limbic system wants you to, like, identify with it. It tells you a story and it's like, wants you to become the story. It's like, no, Limby, that's your story, not mine. I'm not having that. But one was struggle. Like, you are in the struggle, and life is such a struggle, and it's just this dark cloud over your head, and it's really nasty feeling. And I was like, no, I'm not identifying with that story. Another one was failure. Like, you failed. You suck as a mom. You're a failure. You didn't make it. However, and I was like, no. We did the picnic. Yeah, I'm not as engaging as I'd like to be with my kids. They'll survive. We still did a 2-mile hike. That's like 5 kids, ages 4 to 10. I'm like, that's not too bad. That's definitely not failure. That's an exaggeration, Libby. Another one is impatience, which is a victim to your circumstance and being angry. And one was like, my brain was like, I just want to get home so I can, go be alone and meditate and get myself back to calm. And it was like my brain wanted to run away from the present moment. And I was like, no, this is my life. I'm not missing it. I'm not going to miss this. I don't care how pissy you're being, Limby. I'm not missing my life just because you're not in a good mood. No, that's not happening. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to engage as much as I possibly can, moment to moment, in the beauty that's surrounding me and my children and whatever's going on until, and we will get home and it'll be okay. Like, it's not going to be that long. And then the other feeling is just overall discouragement. That's another big one, is it just wants you to feel discouraged about all of that. The struggle story, the failure story, the impatience story, all of it leads to a feeling of discouragement, which creates that stress chemistry again. One that I didn't deal with because of how far along I am in my recovery, but that many who are earlier on deal with, is the limbic system being like, oh, it's not working. What you're doing is not working because you're struggling. It's hard. It's not working. And that's really just the case that, again, your limbic system is activated and your positive pathways aren't active or strong enough at that present moment in order to override the limbic system completely. That just is where you're at in that moment. It says nothing about the process as a whole. It's really just a story, again, to make you feel despairing and discouraged and hopeless and all the things that take you back to that negative chemistry. It's all just a bunch of... It's the limbic system's calling all kinds of bluffs. So when what to do in those moments is really just to pause and take moments to re-engage with what's happening. There were many points on the way back where I squatted on the ground for, and there was like people coming and going on the trail, but I was like, I'm not gonna lose my stuff on this trail with my kids. Like, I am keeping my sanity until we get home. I don't care what it takes. So it kind of like herd everyone to the side of the trail and just squat on the ground and like refocus for 30 seconds. They're like, okay, we're good, let's go, and get up. And I did that a number of times, and I had to, kind of just take time to observe the scenery and just keep pausing over and over again and taking deep breaths and reminding myself, no, I'm not engaging with that. I'm not engaging with that. I'm here. I choose my life. I choose my recovery. I choose to be here now, experiencing my life. I am not a victim of this. I chose this. We did an amazing job, all things considered, and we'll be home soon. And just continuing to tell myself as many positive stories as I could and perspectives about that situation until we did eventually get home and I was able to calm my brain down. But that's what it looks like to do it practically. It's a lot of pausing yourself and taking deep breaths and refocusing and, just interrupting with whatever you can use to refocus yourself on something positive or something grounded in that moment. And continuing to not identify with the stories the limbic system wants to tell you, because they're not true. So those are the 2 things that were somewhat related and that my client thought would be a good... They're definitely details of reintegration and definitely not the whole story, but important things, I think, to represent, because this is probably the hardest thing most of us will ever do. It's true. So that's the real nitty-gritty of it, and I hope that you find this encouraging and helpful in any way, because Lord knows we all need that. And that's that for tonight. I love you, my friends, and I'll talk to you soon.